Ma'a, Yana, Treya, Ri. That's a Ri sound, actually. It sounds like Ri, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I want to try that one again. Manu, Ek, Re, Da, Q, Ki, Ma'a, Yana, Treya, Ri. Okay. Treya. Yeah, T-R-A-I-A, Treya. And you know, it's interesting. If you look at the Mira and the Treya, and you take part of the Ra off the Mira, you get my Treya. Sound familiar?
Oh, my God.
Yes. Yes, the Lord Maitreya, or so it calls itself. Believe me, if some of these things were good guys, I'd be afraid to say some of the things I do. You know, like if Archangel Michael was really a good angel, well, I'd be terrified that, like, you know, I'd bring horrible things down upon my head by saying something not pleasant about someone. But you know, no, yeah. I'm trying to figure out what combinations of mess they're using with the names like Michael, and there's millions of people named Michael now. Because the Bible, that was the name in the Bible that was so important. This is...
Who is like God? Like God.
I know, there's a trick to this. But anyway, the languages that we have right now are combinations of taking pieces of the 15 primary rays and combining them. Some of them are being combined in the natural ways that they normally would be in the original language. The original spoken language was Anahazi. That was the Elohai Elohim language. And all of the languages in this time matrix originally came from there, but there's been other reversed matrix languages plugged in. A reversed matrix language means we're taught an alphabet, and some of those are actually reversed symbols that have reversed tones that when you speak them, and you put words together with those letters and those tones, and you speak them just by the fact of talking, you can keep the reversal set in your atoms. This is what's been going on here. We have languages that are partially built on the natural languages that hold the regular divine blueprint into our body. And then we have parts of those languages that have been mixed with languages from Nibiru and from the Phantom Matrix that have put later letters in those languages that don't belong there, and they have taken out primary letters that did belong in the languages that would release the mana, the ire, and the mane. So our languages right now, we're actually working at a deficit because we're having to translate the divine teachings through a language that has like a skip code reversal. Not everything's reversed. It might be every fourth letter, then every sixth, then every second, then every fourth, then every sixth, and then every second. So it's very hard, and every language here has it. There's not one language that has escaped this reversal mess. That started with the Tower of Babel stuff, where they really got into reversing all sorts of things. They scrambled the languages. Yes. Anything that's on planet at this point has gone through that. It had to do with what they did with the magnetic grids in 3470 BC, when they did a partial shift. Like there was the final stage in their Nibiruan Merkaba reversal plan, where half of the planetary Merkaba is literally turned in reverse. That turned half of the natural language patterns and flow patterns here into reversals. So it has affected everything. And part of our challenge and part of our healing is bringing back the old languages that don't have those. Part of it's almost like catch-22. How do you do that? Because as soon as you try to translate it into this language, it shifts something. So we work with the symbols as well as the sounds. And what the sounds can't do, the symbols will, and vice versa. That's why we... Now, you know you are doing it. There's a seriousness, a posture, a gesture of energy that goes with these. That I have a feeling we'll all find a way of holding that, but there is a gesture of eloquence. It's almost like a being that knows exactly how to move its parts. There's a very odd way of how there's actually a flow and a grace that this commands power. You know you are talking to God and you are co-creating with God because you know that you and God are one and that you were never really separated. So you know that what you are intending to manifest right now is God intending to manifest that, and therefore you are speaking it into being, and you know you are. You're not doubting whether you can. You're not wondering if God will let you. There's a difference. You are speaking it. You are commanding it lovingly, with reverent respect to all creation, commanding a creation. First you embed it with this particular tone. And this is the one that once we get good at trying to figure out how to say it quickly all by itself and then possibly getting the feeling of there's a bit of a song to it. But these are less songs than this. Like this request is much more of a song feel to it where it moves like this. These are much more like, if you could look at them in energy, these have much more of a tight, like a line of energy as opposed to a wave of energy moving up and down. The request seems to carry a signature that moves up and down like this, do-do-do-do-do-do-do, like a tune. These tend to have, I feel, two currents that move with them. One that comes this way and one that goes that way at the same time. Almost like this very finely balanced set of currents that move. It's very different from the energy signature of the one above it. Now with this one, so this one you will actually not hear as much musical to this. This will be more like spoken tones, where this one will always sound, when it's used the right way, it will sound like more of a wave form. Let me see what this one does. This is the pause breath. This is where the intention is created. Actually the sequence to using these, I believe, is you take the in-breath, and then with that in-breath, you'd speak out this. You'd say that line. Then you'd pause. What you're doing in the pause is in-breath, you've spoken the line, and you've activated it through transmitting it out. Ideally, you would do these two acts in the same breath. You would inhale and bring those tones into verbal, where you could hear them with your ears. But right now, because it's a little difficult to do that, we will actually take two steps here. We'll take the breath, inhale, and then the ear shy. This is going to take a while for me to get this. You know, maybe you guys will do better than me. Then there will be the pause breath. The pause is still a breath. What happens in the pause is what you just sent home here. You sent it into the manifestation medium, and it got embedded from this breath. Well, it's embedded in the pause breath is where it takes. Okay? You give it enough time. Okay, you breathe it in. Do nothing for a bit. We breathe really fast here. We give no pause time. And that does a lot of things as far as even like oxygen in the lungs and going into the blood and stuff. But there's a little bit of a pause at the top of the inhale and top of an exhale that if you use it, it is the time when you're allowing the energy transfers to have enough time to fully transfer. If you want to transfer, it's like how you can compare it to, I just was remembering trying to pull the graph off the computer today, where it had a lot of pixels or whatever they call those things, and it takes a while for it to download from the computer into the printer, depending on how big the picture is. Well, if you can look at your relationship with your creation current, the inhale breath, is that you're trying to take it from here, where you decided, you set in the screen what you want to have manifest, but now you have to send it to the printer, right? And it takes a while to get the signal. The signal goes on the breath, but if you immediately just go, you didn't give it any take time. You get like a piece of the picture, but the rest of the stuff that was coming in on that current just got blown back out too fast, and it demanifested. It didn't take in the medium. So there's an inhale process, then you verbalize the tone, and do nothing for a few moments. Then, on the next one, again, these would be done before, like this one here. The pause breath would then go to the out breath. The next one, technically, it would be inhale and do the sound at the same time, pause, and then exhale and do the sound at the same time. But we're going to do it with, inhale, breath, and then on the exhale, do the quick exhale after, do the sound, then pause. Then we're going to inhale again, because we still need to get air back in our lungs again to bring that current, to catch the coming out current. Okay? So we'd do the out breath. All right, we have our inhale. And then we would do this, the intention manifestation. This is where what we were intending gets manifest. It gets taken from the man-out field, projected on the man-A current, and out into manifestation. If you can see the process here, it goes from here and comes out here, actually, in the key. It goes from the man-A, stations beyond consciousness, and comes out in the key, which is actually D2. All right, now D2 is interesting because we always perceive as solid reality what exists one-dimensional frequency band below our station of consciousness. We've been stuck in dimension 3 state of consciousness for a long time on this planet. So what we're seeing is D2. So this one is very powerful if you want to start seeing things happen. Now, if you wanted to make it happen in D5, stop it there. See, these are, eventually we will learn how to use these as where to place your manifestation. All right? You wouldn't have to use the whole sequence. You start to combine sequences. I want to place it over here and in that time frame and in that dimensional band, this in the past, that in the future, these kind of things. This is the beginning of learning how to do that, by combining the tones. But first, you need to get the sequences activated in your body, so that's what these are. So you have the request, the directive, which you're embedding. You're directing that request back into the God space. And then you have the creation, where it's actually being created back there. You're not going to create it out here. The creation isn't out here. The creation takes place back there in places you don't see in the hologram. And then the manifestation of the creation comes out here into the hologram. Okay? And this would be the last one. You want to try this one? Okay, tomorrow we will have copies of this so we can all go home and play with these and see how long it takes to try to get our tongues around these, wrap our brains and our tongues around them at the same time. All right, this one, sound 4. The out breath is mane, ka, I, ha, hu, ra, hara, maya, mana, hi. Now this is just to show you that ki is a key sound, okay, that thing over there. Now I remember there was something that they used, that there was, I can remember somebody misusing this sequence here. That they cut this stuff out of it. They didn't use that. They were trying to access the mana from these levels, and they would, with negative intention on it, and they would. You can create negative with the mana force. Now if you use it from its source, its original, mana, if you put in the beginning the original Akasha part, you can't. That's what will align it with divine right order. But you can make messes if you start to play with it on the lower levels, if you don't connect it to the higher levels. And that's how Phantom Matrix ended up being created in the first place. Okay. Now, when we're bringing these technologies out, yes, people can begin to use them to do nasty things. That's known. They've been using them anyway. The metaphysical societies that have been, let's say, the founding cultural organizations of the European and American civilizations in the last, say, 10,000 years, they have been using combinations of very unsacred words to make things happen. And they are beginning to use technologies to broadcast them in silent sound waves. Psychotronics use not just words, you're going to listen to your government, not that just that kind of stuff. That's subliminal programming, boring stuff, right? They are transmitting the frequencies of certain ancient sound combinations that were known to activate parts of the DNA template that have been compromised through the interbreeding of the races, where we picked up Draconian or we picked up Anunnaki code, so we're all like an amalgamation of a mess inside our DNA right now. They're beginning to broadcast tones that are meant to repress the human element of the codes and play up the other elements of the codes, which means the codes will progressively activate to turn us into monadic reversal. Sound is very, very powerful. These ancient things, they didn't even need psychotronic guns and things to project them with. They could use their voices. Some of the most evil avatars were very, very well spoken. They would be able to use the tones, even in normal speech, by the lilt in the voice or the way they carried the voice. They could use very benign words, but they would be triggering activations with things behind it. I heard a person do this in a New York Expo once, and I didn't realize it was happening when I first heard it. It was a lady, she had a very sweet little voice, and was just very, I was thinking, something weird is happening. I could feel it. My heart chakra was kind of going like this, and I was starting to get constriction in my throat. And I looked at the audience, because I was on a panel. I looked in the audience, and I could see people's bodies starting to react. And they were getting spacey. They were kind of looking at her and going, I was thinking, my God, she's hypnotizing them. What is that? Who is that person? And that's when I saw the beetle inside. That was a person that I talked about before. I saw the beetle inside of them. They can use language as a surface carrier, but underneath it, they're modulating their voice in ways and using tones that are triggering things that will have an effect on the chemicals in your body, on your DNA. And if you're not aware of these things, and you're not having enough frequency in your fields of your natural life force currents, you can actually be affected by them. If you have enough of your own natural D12 frequency or even the subharmonics running through your body, you won't be affected by that kind of stuff. But we're very, very susceptible to tone, because we're built on tone. Our bodies are built on the void, the sound, and the light. So sound and light and the frequencies of the void can all be used to interface with us for positive or negative purposes. When we begin to use it for positive purposes, we progressively become immune. to being any victim of it being used as negative purposes, for negative purposes against us. So we're creating our own immunity as we create our own strength. And we can help other people as well. When we begin to speak these tones, we're bringing them back into life on this planet. They have been hidden for a very long time because these were the tones that would undo the negative ones that the others are trying to use. This place has been a sound war. There's been a sound war going on here for ages, even right down to what animals were seated here to carry what frequencies of sound. Check out the oceans. Find out which dolphins are on which team. It's really interesting. Which ones project which type of frequencies, and which side are the whales on. These are they've all been seated here at different times to hold frequency and to generate sound that will directly affect the planetary shields and the life field of everything on the planetary shields. So it's very, very deep. When we start to use this, it's beginning to reclaim what was once our common ancient knowledge. We were once masters of the rays ourselves. We didn't need other masters of the rays because we were masters of our own rays. And we didn't try to use our rays to hurt other people. But we entered a game to find out more about what was wrong so we could help fix it. And we fell right down to the bottom of that game so we could then eventually drag ourselves back up with the sound and know how to help the others who had gone down and couldn't get out yet. So we're actually in the middle of divine right order right now, even though it's a testy time, and even though there may be some messy dramas coming our way on a planetary level, this is still in divine right order. It's the fulfillment of an ancient agreement, healing experiment that was being done. We're getting our sound back now, and eventually we'll get the light back that goes with it, and eventually we will have the power back that goes with that. We are healing our bodies and our cells through these sounds. The end sound tone is interesting. It's part of what we've been using for a while, Ashalam, which basically means I go in peace or I am peace. I embody peace now. There's several meanings of Ashalam, and it like carries. It has a certain carrier wave that is a very peaceful wave. But this is, it came through, it has a certain lilt to it. I can find it. It takes me a while to look at these and find them. Ashalam ta. Eka. Ashalam ta eka shada. Okay? Da. In fact, the shada, when we get into shaddai ure akum tan, the shaddai ure is the pillar of first cause light, so this has something to do with that. Okay, that's using some of those tones there. Let me see if I can try that again. Ashalam ta eka shada. And it's like the D is it's not full D. It's hard to put that sound. You can put a small D, but it's not a small D sound. It's like almost, I should put a DH there, I think, because it's like a D. It's almost like a French-sounding D, where it has a to it, a little more breath to it. Okay, Ashalam ta eka shada akom tum. I can see that, feel that at the end of that shaddai akom tum would actually could run off of this. But Ashalam ta eka sha de. How would I put that? How would you spell that? D, small d, a, de. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to change this, I think, to a small d with a small a to get the de type of sound that's closer. De. Actually, I did what I do sometimes. It's actually this, which is the eh sound, but it's spelled with it. This is where it gets tricky with trying to record it this way, because if it's like where you use a capital for the name of God, capital letter. Well, that's why there's a capital letter in front of that, even though it's not ikesha, ikasha. It's akasha. All right. So that's where it's tricky. There's some faults to this type of notation, like that, where we're trying to show you how to use, like, the big letters mean, say it, full strength. The small letters mean say it soft. Eventually, I hope we get a better way of translating that, but it's close enough to get you to the sound tone that you need to get to. You'll find your own body modulating it. I mean, there are some people that sing, when you sing the Song of Lyra, it comes out different. The people just say that the sound's different, and especially if you have accents. If you're from a different country, and you're learning English, if English isn't your first language, you'll sound completely different when you sing the same tones because of your other patterning. So they've told us that there's a range of when you go so far off that it means something different completely, and they'll let me know where that is. Like when I'm taking the translations from the plates, Ma'a's watching what I'm doing. And I'm saying, I don't know, I feel it there and I hear it, because sometimes I can hear the tones inside, but there's no sound in the alphabet that I can find that makes that tone. And he'll say, try this is the closest you've got, and he'll like down stuff it for me and say, use a U there, a U-E-I. U-E? What is that? Closest you can get to that tone. Okay? So, anyway, we will work with these some more tomorrow, and I think we'll try, I'm trying to think, it will probably be tomorrow evening by the time we're able to get the finalized books back for you from Kinko's, because they're not finished yet. I have to go, when we leave here tonight, I'm going to go home and be on the computer again. At least I got about an hour's sleep over dinner, because there's more pages to put in this thing. And then we have to be down at the beach at 7 in the morning, of course, which means somewhere in that time frame we have to drop it all off at Kinko's. So by the time we get back, before we go to the beach for the round table at night, before you guys are leaving, we have to pick it up at Kinko's and it has to be done. So we have a bit of a rush happening where that's concerned. But I was going to say I wish that we had more time, because I would try to get these to have everybody have one by the time we go out on the beach in the morning, but that's probably not going to be too easy to do. Okay? All right. We could, okay, 100 of them? 100 of them? Okay, we will try to do that, and also have another copy that's like stapled into your pack, into your chart pack with you, so you don't, if you lose this one, you still have it in sequence. Okay. Okay. Okay, where do we meet? Okay, here's the fun. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Where the little snack bar is and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Okay. Now, does anybody not know where Siesta Key Beach is? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Is there somebody? Is Mac? Are you familiar enough with it here to explain how to get there at all? All right. Who is familiar with here? Who is good at giving directions to Siesta Key from wherever somebody might be staying? Okay. Would we ask you to like stay and talk to the people? Okay. Wait a minute. Excuse me. Yeah, she's good. She's always out on her bike. She knows the direct, things around, but she doesn't go that far. She's not allowed as far as Siesta Key. All right, so how about this? The people who know how to know the area well enough to give directions, if you would, when we're getting ready to go out, if you would like just, where's the best place? We have to get out of the building, right? Because they want to clean and I need to wrap this up. How about could we meet right just outside for a little bit? For anybody that needs to get the directions, if the people who have the directions, who are willing to help, will be out by right outside. Would you just go right outside the door by where the ashtray is there? Okay. And 7 a.m. for ordinations, and 7:30 we're going to begin working. Well, as soon as we're done with the ordinations, we're going to begin working with the technologies.
Rows of the chairs and the litter out.
That requires more space, so we have the open air and the beach and everything to do it. There's also going to be the round table tonight. This is different than the round table. I really wish the bird would be done with this conversation. I'm being heckled by a bird. He's like, really? He's louder than I am. Are you done? It sounds like he's laughing.
I didn't know if he was going ha-ha or ma-ha.
No, it's more like a relay station to Series A.
Yeah, I think that was the best. Or interference.
Yeah.
I wonder, I've always wondered what that sound looked like.
Yeah, he's about to poop on somebody.
Oh, it's one of those black things.
That's right.
Yeah, black crow.
Oh, brother.
What's redemption?
He's trying to get his gang here.
So it's those that make that awful noise. I've heard these outside at the house when I first moved to Florida, because I was originally from Pennsylvania, and there are sounds of things down here that you never hear up north. And this was one of them. It took me weeks to try to figure out what was that. I couldn't even place what animal it might be. Was it a bird? Was it some kind of weird reptile? Because there's weird reptile and insect noises down here. Was it a frog? There's some bullfrogs that sound close to that. This is the first time I've seen what the thing was that makes that noise. And it's strange because we had, about 2 weeks ago, we had some really strange things happening where these fleets of black birds would descend on the lawn. It was like a movie, like a scene out of the movie Birds or something. And it was really strange. It was only these black things, these big black crow-like things. And it was almost like it had an omen feeling to it, and it wasn't a pleasant one. I didn't know what it was about, but I was thinking, oh, yuck, there they are again. And I like birds, but there was something about the energy that they were about and that they were bringing. And they didn't make this noise. They didn't make any noise. You could hardly even hear them. They just descended like 100 of them on the lawn and decided our lawn was where they were going to eat. You know, and there's nothing there that's not on the neighbors. So twice they've come. I think it's a spy. Yeah. It depends on who it is. Okay, I mean, some birds are out of pure strain matrices. Other birds are planted here from races from phantom. So this goes with plants and everything else too.
Check it out. Anna, there's a lot of these all over New York now.
Are there?
Yeah.
All right.
It used to be way out in Long Island, but now they're all around Brooklyn.
All around Brooklyn, yeah. I get a funny feeling from these guys. I mean, I like all animals and plants and things, and I don't, judge them. But as far as what matrix they're coming from and what energies they're carrying, I don't get a real positive feeling on these big black guys. Yeah.
They don't want us talking about them.
Yeah, I think he just found out what he needed to know. Yes, they do know we're spies. No. See, there was old Native American and other types of tribal people knew that they could project their consciousness into animal forms, and they could temporarily possess the animal body and direct it where they wanted to. And that was the feeling I got with these beings on the lawn. I just had a feeling that who borrowed the birds, Like, I didn't think the birds thought it was a good idea to go there themselves. It was almost like trying to do something to the grids at the house by having a whole bunch of this frequency come and land on the lawn at the same time and hang out there. They hung out there for about half an hour. So that was just like a little thing. Oh, here, another one of them's back again. There's a lot of things that there's a lot more to them than meets the eye, but it's also important to not go off on total paranoid tangents where you start to see things and things that aren't there. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt, but I'm learning to acknowledge it. I used to be in a denial space with it, where psychotronics, for instance. There's other people out there talking about psychotronics, and I've had a lot of times in my life where I was, they attempted to use them on me to try to shut me up and shut my DNA down so I couldn't, pull any more stuff. But it would be the last thing that I would look for as the reason why, I was having a bad day or I was getting sick or something was happening to me. I've learned to balance that now where I'm not anti-looking at what the negative solution might be, but I was so wanting to not get caught up in the trap of seeing the negative in everything where, you take innocent things that have really no negative thing coming at you and you start to get paranoid where you think everything's coming at you. So it's just a balancing thing, but I definitely think they're visitors, they're observing us. I wouldn't doubt it if they have something to do. There's an interesting feel. They're talking to each other now. There's another one. Yeah, they sent another one over. I get a strange feeling that there's a connection with these guys, with the black crow things, that has to do with, oddly enough, Montauk, New York. I know there have been experiments that went on from Montauk where they were combining remote viewing technologies and teaching people to project out of body and to be able to not only go and observe things, but to be able to go and mess with people's astral fields, because they were teaching them how to see the astral bodies of people and how to literally, do psychic attack on them. And I wouldn't doubt if they've been playing with animal as well, as being able to put yourself into animals, because animals could be used for weapons. You could literally, if you could possess an animal, you could cause harm very targeted. You could find the dog of a person, that person's with the dog all the time, and you could, if you were, trying to harm someone, you could actually put your consciousness into that dog and temporarily have it attack. And these are some of the things that the shamans of old used to know that they could do. And now, since they've been bringing undercover people involved with Montauk, people involved with the Philadelphia experiment, people involved primarily with the Zeta agendas, I think have been studying these remote how to mess with people tactics. So I get a feeling that the crows are kind of like the satellites of, it's definitely one of the Zeta group that's involved with this, that's connected to the whole Montauk area. There's even some people that can feel it. Yeah, this is just spontaneous coming through. We weren't supposed to talk about crows. So anyway, we'll get off the subject of crows. But I was just getting that. I do think there's something to the crow thing. So it's something you might want to observe in your life, be aware of, just in case. They'll respond more because there's some birds, especially, and I felt this with these guys too, they're very desensitized to certain types of subtle frequency. We'd have to like really blast them and throw Maharic balls at them to get them to pay attention. There's actually something moving toward them. It would be literally out of their range, and they wouldn't feel direct Maharic frequency. Now, they can't do anything to us because we already have the Maharic frequency, and so they're not going to hurt us. But what they will respond to is when we get up and start, like when we do the exercise and we're toning. Now, they'll respond to the vibrations of the three-dimensional translation of those tones as it's coming out. It'll create a sound wave field that it'll probably agitate them, and they'll probably go, I would think. It would be interesting to watch how they react to that. You can try that with other animals if you're ever out. This is something, I guess, is supposed to be part of the conversation this morning, is to be aware that there are interesting things taking place that you might not realize are there. Like if you start to see certain types of animal forms or certain things that just seem, gee, there's another one of those that keeps appearing in my hologram, right, whatever it might be. For a long time I had moths chasing me, and I still have this closet where these moths, no matter what we do to them, they won't go away, right? Now, it took me a long time to figure out that the moths are associated with the draconian dragon moths, all right? They're little, some of them, not all of them. Some moths are nice. And there used to be one white moth that would appear at all sorts of different times in my life, and like for years. Now, moths don't live that long, but this same moth with a big, fat, hairy white body and these beautiful white wings, it was a big one, would appear in the weirdest places. In the middle of winter, it would be on the outside of my window while I was doing dishes in the kitchen. Moths aren't outside up north in the middle of winter when there's snow and ice, you know? This one was like a protection one. Somebody sent it, so this one wasn't from the draconian matrix, but other types of them are, and you can trace the signature back. Be aware of it, and just kind of in an amused sort of way, and check out what's around you. You know, sometimes if you're noticing animal life or insect life, insects are a big one. Most of the insects, like when you go to Tara, where the grids are straightened out better than they are here, they don't have that type of insect life. They don't have things that bite and things that sting like that. These were put here, you know? And they might like take care of each other and have become part of what's the unnatural food chain here, but they're parts of the consciousness. They're manifestations of the Phantom Matrix life forms. They put them here to hold frequency. They've also put them here so they have weapons when necessary. You know, a great way to get rid of somebody if there's a shaman out in the jungle that's doing too much good work and it's messing up your grids and you're trying to do something bad. Well, if you have some snakes hanging out there that you can tap right into their fields, you just go send one of your anacondas over there and take care of that shaman. You know what I mean? So there's weird stuff going on. It's been going on all along. In the ancient days, we knew consciously that this wasn't weird stuff. This was some of the realities that can be a part of using your consciousness and knowing how to project it and how to move it. But it's good to get in touch with the fact that those old arts haven't died off. There's just certain collectives that have held that knowledge and have used it, and some of them are not using it for positive. There are others that are using it for positive, but you won't find them possessing animals because it's a spiritual violation to force your consciousness into an animal body and make that animal do something. That would be just like somebody forcing themselves into your body and making you do something. You can communicate with the animals. You can ask a bird, for instance. I did this once. I asked a bird if, telepathically, I telepathed to it. It was a blue jay. I telepathed to it, could it help me to understand what it felt like to be a bird? Could I move my consciousness at least near it? Or even like around it, but in a way that wouldn't harm it. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know if you're allowed to do that at all. I was kind of like, okay, bird, we can teach each other things. You want to feel what it feels like to be a human? You can try on my energy and I'll try on yours. And I got this really strange, the bird understood me. I just felt this direct cognition coming. And it made like an energy line where I knew I was supposed to follow that with a part of my consciousness. And I kind of spread out in the like etheric body field of the bird, and that wasn't violating it. It allowed me to be there. And the most amazing perceptions came to me. I found out what it felt like to be bird. I could feel this communication taking place. I could feel the bird feet as if I was the bird. And I could feel that the bird has a constant communication with the tree consciousness when it lands on a branch. They communicate with each other. It's like we'd say, oh, hi, George, you're back again. Yeah, hello, how are you doing today? I mean, they communicate with each other very, very consciously. The birds can feel through their feet the pulse of the tree. Trees have a heartbeat. They have a pulse, and it's like the blood flowing through human veins. They have their own pulse, and they have their own very large awareness. I was able to feel all of this thing through the bird. The bird let me know. It gave me permission to experience an expanded state of consciousness by experiencing what it's like to experience bird. And it had a type of consciousness of its own where it was, in certain ways, more mature than what we call human consciousness, because it didn't have the same ability to get tied up in emotional issues, like to get dragged around by the emotional body. There's just a very astute and crisp awareness of being focused in the moment and feeling the natural energy flow, the instincts flow. It knew where it would go to eat. It knew what it would do. It didn't have to think thoughts in linear terms, but it perceived huge amounts of things. This little tiny bird up in the tree was fully aware, and this was like I was on a second-floor apartment and I was out on my porch. There was a yard down below that had this family of cats in the yard down below, and the bird and the cats weren't paying any attention to each other, but when I was in the bird, I was fully aware that that bird was aware of about a 5-block radius of every cat and dog and thing that could eat it. It was just very aware of it, not afraid of it. It just like registered it like radar. It would just have these little over there, and it knew how to direct its thought. It's like its flight path, where to go to avoid the obstacles that were in its way. There was a huge awareness. You can try some of these things sometimes. Put your Maharic seal up. Try to begin to communicate with the other things that are there. This is part of what the Manau teachings are about. And we'll probably talk more about that when we go back into into the workshop space. But it's the Manau force that is really the common force. We have our Christos self, and then when we go all the way back up, we have the Manau force, the Manau, the Ire, and the Mane, that are the linking factors. Everything is made out of those forces of consciousness. So we can all begin to understand and begin to feel each other and to feel the environment we live in. We can understand what it feels like to be a sand crystal, to actually make ourselves tiny, tiny, tiny and feel what that sand crystal is feeling. And you can tell the difference in the type of perception. Okay, as a human, I feel things and kind of perceive this way. You'll feel this whole different type of the way consciousness is used in other forms, how the Manau and the life force consciousness expresses itself. A tree perceives things very different than a human and very different than a sand, a grain of sand. It's fascinating to begin the process of getting to know your environment again. And as you do, you're getting to know your body as well, because parts of these things live in your body. There are parts of us that our DNA is directly connected to sand and to sea and to sky. If we begin to play with that ability to move our consciousness out of its very tight little focus here, we begin to experience more of really what's going on around us. And the people on Tara, for example, and the people in Inner Earth, what they do when they just say walk across the beach, they have an awareness that in its way is similar to what that bird's consciousness was. They are aware of everything that's going around for blocks. They're not thinking about it. They're just fully, crisply aware. It's part of their now moment awareness. If they want to, they could tune their consciousness and hear any conversation that was going on between any of the kingdoms. They could hear insects talk to each other. They could hear birds talk to trees. They could hear people talk to each other if they wanted to. These things are alive and awake in the consciousness. This is the type of consciousness that we're evolving toward. And it's easy to help ourselves with this if we begin by realizing we can move it out of our head where it's stuck. All right, we get stuck right here. We can try, I think, before we leave, after we do the things that we're going to do first, I think we'll try to get to know something on the beach, and we'll be able to pick something. But we're going to do an exercise. It's not a written one yet, but an exercise in consciousness projection where we begin to, first there's a protocol involved. Again, you don't force your consciousness into anything because that would be a violation. You request it to assist you in experiencing a lesson that you'd like to know. So we'll take it from there, and we'll do that after the other stuff I want to talk about originally. Yes? Yep.
And they'll tell me, like, if there's a feather, they're always giving me feathers.
Right. Yep. That's excellent. She was saying that she has a telepathic rapport with eagles, and they even will tell her where feathers are so she can collect eagle feathers and those kind of things. This is some of the things you can develop, and it's very, very worth it. This is when you get the Manau forces are becoming alive in your body more and more. It's that force that allows you to translate, where you can speak eagle, or you can speak tree, where you can understand each other through direct cognition. The Manau force in the body is the medium through which that takes place, through which that exchange, where you don't need a language dictionary or a little translation module in there that'll translate bird into human. It's because we're made of that same consciousness field. There is a place of direct cognition where we simply can telepathically send information into each other. It is wonderful to be able to go out in the world and know you can, even if you never talk to another human being again, realize you never ever have to be lonely. Look at all the life forms here. You can go talk to the bunnies in your garden and actually establish a rapport with them. Well, they'll talk back to you. And if they're feeling lonely, they'll come back and keep you company because they feel your lonesomeness and they don't want you to feel bad. That we're so taught to just have human relationships here and to look at everything else as stuff, as things for our manipulation. You know, most people think of, I mean, in the mainstream, we've been taught to look at animals as food. They're just a thing to serve us. That we have, like, they're not treated like beings. They're not treated like souls. And we feel very isolated. Human beings feel very isolated because of the way they've chosen to act to the environment here. We've had a lot of help getting to those choices that were not good for us. But as we begin to awaken the man-now force within us and we begin to awaken our DNA and begin to heal ourselves, part of this healing is rejoining the community of life. And that means reestablishing our ability to communicate with trees and plants and realize that reverence, remember that was one of the attitudes, the 12 attitudes of mastery, reverent respect. We start to reclaim respect for the other beings on this planet. Those trees are people, all right? Sand grains are people in their own way. They have a different kind of consciousness than a tree does. But when we start to interact with our environment in the way we were intended to, where we respect it as a living kingdom of consciousness that is there to interact with us. We're not supposed to just use it. It's not just natural resources. We're supposed to, we rape the land. Our cultures rape the land. They take everything they can out of the land. Do they ever ask? No. Do you ever see the geologist sitting there saying, okay, land spirit, can you please tell me where you would like me to dig for oil? Or please tell me where there's a vein of gold that's ready to come out. Then, and show me the best way to help this. No. They go and they use their instruments and they figure out where something is and they rip the land apart and they drag it out. No asking, no respect, no reverence whatsoever. That's why at some point, if this planet starts to rebel, whose fault is it? Is it Mother Earth having a temper tantrum? I think Mother Earth has a lot of patience, personally. I think if I were Mother Earth, I would have had a temper tantrum a long time before. Get off me! So this is part of what we're going to learn. When we work with Vecca codes, the Vecca codes allow us to activate in the body the currents of consciousness that will progressively allow us to develop these relationships with birds and plants and animals, and also with other beings from other places. Because if you can telepath with a bird, so let's say, that's sitting in front of you, you can also telepath with a bird that's in the next county. And if you can do that, you can telepath with things that aren't on the planet as well. You can learn to establish relationships with other space-time periods, with beings who have lots of information that's worth listening to, because it can help you in your growth here. And this is what we're moving into. The contact course really begins with the Man-Now course, of learning about the Man-Now in yourself and the fact that it's in everything else, and beginning to develop reverent respect, where you start to say, okay, instead of looking at things as its, look at them as whose. Next time you walk on the sand and say, I wonder who I'm walking on. I wonder if they think the same about me. Do you ever think that maybe the sand wonders who those warm feet are that are on top of it? Do you think the sand is aware? It is. It doesn't think about it. I don't think it really cares what your name is. It doesn't need a name. It feels your energy signature. Sand can actually read everything that's going on in your body just by you having your feet on it. It knows more about you right now than you do. What? Most of the time I found no, because that's the form it's chosen, the consciousness that's making up sand, for instance. It used to be rocks and things, and it chose to go through an evolutionary cycle where it would become sand, and it's a much longer, stretched out type of consciousness, where it's experiencing sensation. And it doesn't worry too much about, it doesn't make a value judgment between a good sensation and a bad sensation in the same way. Now, the earth itself does. If something is being done to the earth that's harmful and violates it, it does know the distinction. But the sand is basically, it's hard to hurt sand. It's beyond a space. It's a type of consciousness that doesn't have a highly developed emotional body attached to it. It's made of very simple molecular structure, and that allows it to have a limited range of perception, so it doesn't feel pain in the same way. So it's very allowing. It just sits there and you can make castles with it, and you can use it in industry and put it through machinery, and you can walk on it, and it doesn't take any of it personally. It's in a state of at-one-ment. It just allows it, and that's okay. So as far as the sand, does it care? It cares that we walk on it. It feels it. It's an interaction. Our walking on sand helps sand feel its aliveness, but it's a different way than we experience that. This is some of the stuff that's worth playing with. If you have questions about, gee, what does sand think? Find out. First you have to realize that it does, or you're going to completely block with that thought pattern any type of impressions you're going to get. If let's say the tree wants to talk to you, but you don't believe trees can talk, the tree can be beaming you with energy, saying, hello, hello, feel me. It'll have to literally reach out and whack you with a branch before you get the idea. And sometimes several times, because the first several times you get whacked with a branch, you'll think it's just the wind. Because you're taught that trees don't think. You're taught that trees just stand there and grow and they do plant stuff, but they don't think. They're not aware of you. They don't talk, and they would never, like a tree would never consciously take a branch and whack you to say, hello, pay attention, I'd like to have a conversation. I found out that trees do that, even when there's no breeze, to make the branches move. Plants move on their own, even if there's no breeze, to make them rustle, if they want to. I had a plant that continually grabbed my hair when I did the dishes. It was an ivy plant that hung over, over the sink in the window. And it was all nicely tucked up where, nothing was supposed to be hanging. And I'd notice every morning I'd come out and there'd be a thing hanging. It kept throwing itself off the hook. Just one small branch of it would throw itself off the hook. So I'd tuck it back up nice and gentle, start doing the dishes. And the first time I thought there was a bug after me. I thought, because it startled me. And it was caught in my hair. I had long hair at the time. And it had literally, put an end of itself, an ivy end through. And it was tangled in my hair. I was like, oh, geez, how'd that happen? Oh, the thing's fallen down again. I put it back up. And then it happened 3 times within about a 5-minute period. And I really tucked it up good the last time, wound it around. And then I got the feeling something weird is going on here. Is there somebody around here? What do we have, ghosts? Somebody's making the ivy move. And then I heard in my head, why does somebody have to be making me move? Maybe I'm making myself move. And I kind of, uh-oh, who said that? And this plant started to communicate with me telepathically. And I was amazed because I'd never really thought about it. I'd never thought that you could do this. I never thought plants would want to do this. And I learned the identity that each leaf on that particular branch of ivy had its own identity. They related to each other like siblings, that they were very distinct. Each leaf was a distinct individual unto itself. And it knew itself as that. And the whole plant itself was a family of individuals. And when leaves die, they didn't mourn them because they knew that that consciousness would come back. But they also knew if you would rip a leaf off before its time, it was like murdering one of their family. And they were very offended by it. So all these things you can learn about. What is divine right action here? Let the environment teach you. It will talk to you. If you want to know what the right way to handle plants is, you need to learn to talk to them. And they'll explain to you if you're doing something that's violating their space. You'll also find out that some plants are nice and some aren't. And this is hard. Everybody thinks, oh, the plant kingdom, it's wonderful, it's all perfect, it's a pure kingdom. Nothing on this planet right now is a pure kingdom in the fact that everything has reversals in it. You'll have plants that were actually originally from Nibiru that were transplanted here as part of the takeover force. And when you start to communicate with them, if you're Anunnaki, they'll talk with you and they'll love you to bits. If you have Anunnaki overlays in your gene code, they'll really have a resonance with you. But if you happen to be an indigo and you're getting your fields clear, you'll find that plant that literally doesn't want to talk to you. It won't, if you try to telepath with it, it'll literally it'll stonewall you, or you might get nasty telepathy coming back and say, uh-oh, somebody must be trying to mess with me because I'm getting curse words back from the plant, you know what I mean? Plants can actually curse you. And now, they don't talk in English. They send out a vibration, all right? The animal kingdoms and the plant kingdoms send out a vibration of intention, of their emotional intention. They are aware of you. And you can say words to a plant. It's not the words themselves that they're translating. It's the vibration underneath them. They speak in direct cognition vibration. When a plant speaks back to you, what's happening is you send out your vibration to it. It gets it. It registers just like language does to us. It uses its language, sends it back in vibration, and our bodies have the mechanism to translate that into the English language flow. The same thing if you start learning to talk with the Iani. They don't speak English. That's not their natural tongue. They speak Anahazi, which is one of the ancient languages that is a huge language, has 144 letters in the alphabet, and imagine all the words and sentences you can come up with that, you know? So when you learn to speak with them, they will speak in your home language. If your home language is Spanish, they'll speak to you in Spanish. They speak in direct cognition, and that's how the communication is taking place, and whatever is necessary, whatever carriers of sound get tacked on, whatever languages, they will come naturally. Your body will translate it for you, because we all have translating mechanisms. It works with the Iani, and it works with the plants, and it works with the animals. Now, we'll talk, before we leave, not here, but tonight, before we leave, I'll be talking a little bit about the crystals as well, the crystal life forms on the planet, and about, you know, crystals that we keep with us, and I'll talk a little bit probably about why we keep the crystals with us, because there's a co-resonance that takes place. And there's stuff happening with the crystals on the planet right now that we can help them, because they're in crisis right now because some of the psychotronics that are being run. So we'll talk about that too, and it'll help us when we get home and we're playing with our crystals. We'll be able to clear them in a way. There's a way to clear crystals that you use the technologies that we're being given now to clear our own atomic structure, that you can begin to clear the atomic structure of crystals. But you can't give a gift that you don't have yet. All right? If you don't have these activations happening in your bodies, like after about a month of working with the techniques that we're being given with the Manau codes, we will be able to begin hold our crystals and begin to transmit that into them, and that pattern will be strong enough to knock out any negative coding they have in them. So like the Tibetan crystals that have been compromised and those kind of things that they're using right now to try to cause damage to people into the planetary grids, we can clear these programs, but we can't clear them yet. All right, once this stuff is activated, once the Vecca codes, the Manau codes especially, reset the mathematics in our body, while we're running those proper mathematics, we can then clear our crystals. We can also learn to transmit larger amounts of that frequency and help to clear the crystal base, literally the crystal matrix that underlies, you know, the planet. So we can help to clear all the crystals on the planet. So we'll get into some of that. Given to me this morning, Manau Technique 2. It's called the Manau Akasha Salutation. Now, is there anybody here that's not familiar at all with, that doesn't know about the technique called the salutations? Okay. Oh, this is good. Oh, 2 people? Okay, you've never seen the salutations. Okay, they're the Merkaba spin ones where you do, like, to activate, it's not round table, but it's the stuff we learned to do before round table, where we're learning to set our Merkabas on the right spin by using spin dance and certain running of frequencies. Okay, you're not familiar with those. Okay, well, you're going to be familiar with them by the end of this exercise. I will give a little bit of introduction then to that. Now, Merkaba fields, do you know what that is? Okay, good, that's a good start. The Merkaba fields that are around us are spinning on the wrong rotations right now because of the planetary grids. A salutation is an ancient art form that the breatharian humans used to use to simply, that was how they got their sustenance. They didn't eat food, they didn't have to. They simply would recharge their Merkaba fields in the morning, once in the morning and once at night, doing this process called the salutation, which was using the body itself, running frequency in the body, then using the body momentum and literally spin dancing in order to use the momentum of the physical body to get the Merkaba field spinning faster at their proper rotation. So that is what a salutation is. The salutation exercise is in several places at this point. I think it's in Kathara, and it's in the Kathara supplement, it's in the Templar book, and this version, the new version of it, is going to be in, in the paperwork that, with any luck, you get at the end of the day today. But it's, for people who haven't done the other salutation technique, it is worth getting something, like finding that technique, because that is like, these are all step-up activations, where if you start at the top one and you haven't done the ones before, the top one might not work at all, because you didn't activate the stuff, the grounding base for those frequencies in the body. So we do suggest that this at some point, this salutation can replace the way salutations are done in the other manuals, as long as you've worked through that phase where you've activated the stuff in the body, set the right, see, the other salutation sets the right spin rates. We set the 33 1/3 and 11 2/3 in that one. This one is assuming that's already been set in your bodies. So at this point, most of the people who have been doing round tables or salutations can move right into this one, and you actually wouldn't have to do the other one before. But if you're training a new group of people, take them through for a month, where you can do both, but don't do the new ones first without taking them through the original ones, because Vecca codes won't activate if there's not enough frequency in the bodies from using Maharic Seal enough and from using the things enough. You won't be able, you can do these, but they're not going to do anything. You're not going to get the codes to activate. Now, this was fun. When they gave me this technique, it's called activating the Density 1 Akasha Transharmonic Merkaba Vehicle, which is the Phase 1, the Manau Merkaba. So this is the beginning of building not only that star tetrahedron shape Merkaba, but this is where we're going to begin getting the mathematical program back awake in our bodies, where we build the inner Earth Merkaba, or the inner timeline Merkaba, that allows us to travel not only up and down here in our system or to go over to parallel, it allows us to go into that larger time frame of the inner Earth cycles, where we can not just pass through the gates to get someplace else, we could actually go in and sustain our fields there. And this is the one that has 12 planes altogether, 6 on top and 6 on the bottom. We'll talk more about that probably this afternoon, and there's going to be a lot more coming out on that in the next several months, because I've been getting all sorts of wild diagrams that are in pieces all over the place that show how these Merkabas work and how they work in the body as well. We have one on each dimensional level of our body. So there's a lot more to come on this new Merkaba, the Akasha Merkaba. This is the beginning of working with the Akasha Merkaba, but we're still going to just visualize ourselves as having the 2 spirals. We're not going to take it into the expanded shape yet. We'll work on that. There'll be next levels after this. But this one was really interesting because in certain ways it's simpler than the other salutation technique. In other ways it's more difficult. You know the magic words that we went over last night, right? Oh, yeah. Well, it just so happens, and I'm surprised I didn't pick up on this before, we have the Manau, the Ire, and the Mane, right? Frequencies of consciousness. Now, these go with the Merkabas as well. The Mane is the electrical transmitting force that when you're running your top Merkaba, the top one, that's the male Merkaba, that one, you are running Mane frequency. You are running subharmonics, like those smaller breakdowns of the Mane frequency. When you are doing the bottom one, the female magnetic Merkaba, you are running the Ire frequency. So what we're going to learn to do, and this is going to be a riot the first time we do it, because we can't even pronounce these things yet. Maybe you can, maybe you guys have practiced, but I'm looking at these things going, it's going to take me a while to do this. What I'm going to try to do is break them down into like you would word sentences, where the emphasis is, like where you know to break, because you just end up with a blah, 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 blah. There's a rhythm to these, so we're going to try to get the rhythm down more as we work with them. But what we're going to learn to do is learn to use these. If we're doing, like we have lunar and solar salutations in the original course of salutations, for those who haven't been familiar with it. The lunar salutations are ones that would be done at night, where you're pulling more of the frequency, that you're actually pulling more Ire frequency in the evenings. And in the daytime, you're pulling more antiparticle frequency, the solar frequencies, which are more Mane frequencies. So there's a difference of which set of words you'd use, depending on whether you're doing lunar or solar salutation. If you were doing the lunar salutation, you would start with activating the top of the bottom of the Merkaba, and you would use the Ire, saw number 2. All right, that list that we got last night, you'd use the number 2 sequence to go with the bottom. Number 2 goes with the bottom, and number 4 goes with the top in that sequence of those songs. And then there's something you do to start. Before you would start activating your fields, you would do the request statement first. It was the first song on your list, and then you would close with the closing song. But there's one that's in the middle that's really interesting. This is what you will do when you stop your spin. In between spins, in this particular exercise, we'll read it to you, and then we're going to try to set it up and do it. Oh boy, it's going to be funny because the tones we're going to have to literally spin with our papers in our hands, going, and try to pick. You'll probably get maybe 4 tones out of the whole string the first time we do this, because we're going to be spinning and trying to read these tones that we have a hard time trying to figure out what they say when we're looking at them sitting still. All right. Now, what's going to get really interesting, we're not going to do this yet integrated with it. The Suriyas that we talked about, the movements, they would also be put in here. Now, when we get up to do a salutation this time, we're not going to worry about putting the movements, the body movements, in addition to these tones. We're going to just try to get through a salutation that gets the tones in the right place. And we know they're going to be very disharmonic at first. After a while, you'll learn to say these things as a command to yourself, and it'll come easy. It's a repetition while you're doing the spin for the bottom Merkaba, you would use the ire sound, the one that goes with that would be the ire shara dk she ta mira prana chi. Really, it's like there's we need to find the rhythm in these things to do it. So hopefully we can find some of that while we're doing it. What would be interesting is when you take these home, and if you work with these, and these are going to be one of the core teachings of the Dance for Life. These are very important, and they're actually going to ask us, when we get our list of 12 actions, of mastery that will help you to, begin to really hold the activations you have and take it higher. You're going to be asked to do one of these every day, not with a group, just with yourself, like a morning exercise or an evening exercise, whichever you prefer. But it will not only set the right spin with your Merkaba, it's going to begin expanding your Merkaba where it can hold the 12 and 12 instead of just the 3 and 3-sided Merkabas. I mean the 6 and 6-sided Merkaba. You will be able to begin building the inner earth Merkaba. But if you don't do it every day, those codes are going to shut down again. So you're starting at square one again. If you don't do it for 6 weeks, you're going to go back to what you were before the first time you ever did it. And you're going to have to wake the stuff all up again. If you do these things and you have the patience to do them, you don't saturate your whole day with it. But once you get used to doing a salutation, you can do it in 5 minutes. You can do it in 4 minutes. Once you get used to using the tones, you don't have to have a piece of paper that you're trying to spin with. In fact, when you go home, putting this on tape, reading those words on tape, once you get the flow, will help. And you can do your salutation with headphones on, with your little, with a little portable, Walkman, those guys, if you want to do it. Or you can literally put it on and beam it into the room, have it on your stereo, put a tape in and just turn it up and sing with it, right? It will help you, and it will also be bringing the tones through. You need to more than listen to them, though. If you're going to use the tape thing, you do need to have them vocalized through you. So you need to sing with the tape, because if you're just listening to them with the tape, it's not moving through your breathing apparatus, so it's not doing the activation. So the principle is really very simple. We're using the things the tone sequences, the magic words that we got yesterday, to begin waking these forces up. The words, the tones, begin waking the forces up. And then we get to amplify the forces, and we get to literally bring these forces into our Merkabas to begin the flow. So we're learning to circulate. Yesterday we learned to activate. Now we're learning to circulate that energy into activation through our bodies progressively. And it is circulating the activation of the Mano and the Ire and the Mane that will begin the process of the atomic healing that this is going to eventually create. And what's going to create the atomic healing? You're not going to do this once and poof, you got all your atoms back to where they need to be. Patience and simple, not overdosing on it, not spending the next 6 years just doing nothing. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do technique for the next 15 hours a day. That will actually have a reverse effect. You'll go on frequency overload and your whole system will shut down. It won't take any of it, right? And you'll go back to where you started before you even tried to, start using technique. Simple daily exercises, and this is one of them. It's going to be asked to be done daily, where you simply build the system. It's like we learn to, since we're very small, we learn to brush our teeth every day, at least once, preferably 3 times, and after meals. We learn to take care of our bodies. We learn to shower and to feed our bodies. This is a way of feeding your body. Instead of feeding the shadow, like we end up doing without really meaning to most of the time, this is helping to feed the healing of the shadow by feeding the natural life force and the natural part of your own template. It's going to be fun to do, I think, once we get them done. There's something about being able to say this whole string of things once we know how to say it. There's going to be a lot more fun than simply spinning around going, rah, rah, rah. I mean, there's only so much you can do with and rah. I mean, we've learned to modulate them. We're going, always spinning, right? But it's still just a very limited tone. Here, the combinations of movement of those tones and speaking those tones are endless, but we need to keep them in the right string. All right, because we're calling on them in sequence, the natural sequence that they're supposed to follow. That's why they were given in the way they were. They're following the natural sound tones of the currents as they go from top to bottom. So there's an interesting thing about this. What this is going to do is get us into, we got a new word that was introduced this morning. We actually had part of the word before, but I didn't know there was a word that the other one was affiliated with. The new word is called, how do you pronounce it? A seeur. It's pronounced S-E-E-Y-O-U-R. That's what it sounds like. But it's spelled S-E, and then it has a little accent mark over the small e, and a capital U-R. A seeur. This is a word for a standing column of sound. All right, that's one of the Iani words, an Anahazi word, meaning a sound form. We hear, on the planet we have rock forms, tree forms. Well, there are sound forms, not just sound waves, but sound forms. That means where sound waves are combined in a very cohesive way that they create objects in sound. All right, a seer, that's a way to pronounce that. A seer is the beginning of becoming a sound sculptor, where we begin to sculpt. We're not just setting waves, not just moving sound through us, but we're beginning to first sculpt the pillar. We're creating the block out of which things can then be carved, the block of sound, which would be the standing columnar wave that every time you do a round or do a salutation, when you leave behind you a seer. Now, a lot of times they're wobbly or they're not very strong. The energy's not very strong because we're just learning how to do the activations. This is going to take it into a point where we're beginning to create solidity in sound. We're really going to be able to generate strong sound pillars. And the seer goes with saying them together confuses me. Suriyas. The suriyas, the movements that we've talked about. Once you set a seer, the suriyas, I was getting totally tongue-tied. The suriyas are movements that you do with your body while you're using these tones of command, right? That will set and it will sculpt where the sound waves, exactly the configurations of the geometricals that those sound waves will take. You don't have to worry about drawing geometrical pictures with sound waves. But there are certain movements of the body, and there will be 12 by the time we're done with the whole set of Dance 4 programs. So there's going to be 3 introduced in each of them. And one goes with each level of the energy. One would be the director of the mana, one would be the director of the mané, and one of the ire. These movements, and they're very simple. All right, I'll qualify that. These are very simple, the first 3 that we're going to learn. And they have cute little names to help us remember them. One is called the rising moon, and that goes with the ire sound sequence. The next one is called the sleeping flower, and that goes with the manao sequence. And the other one is called the flowing waters. And they're very simple. These are upper body ones. There will be a time, if we survive to the last level of this course, when we're in the Dance for Joy, and we're learning avatar integration, where the legs get involved too, in doing more than just spinning while you're spinning. But for now, we're going to learn how to, first of all, get the tones in, to begin to use these toning sequences. We're going to go from doing salutations that had one tone into having this whole string of them. So it's kind of like doing your own little round table all by yourself, where you have these tones to remember and where to put them. There's a place where, when we use the manao tones, it's going to be when we stop the spin before we go into the next spin for the next set of the next one. And this is the creation point, where you're setting how strong you're able to get yourself through activating the first part of the Merkaba and then doing the stop. It's a stop point posture where you stop the spin before you go into the next. You're not just going to stop. And I know how people tend to stop now, at least in round tables. They stop and just stagger all around a little bit because they're a little bit dizzy. And yeah, it's going to become important to focus on how you're holding your posture, to be able to hold yourself a little more stable, where try not to, because you get out of, you're done to one spin and you kind of stop and you're going, and your feet are kind of like going like this a little bit. We're going to learn how to hold this with more grace in our stop point before we go in to getting the other spin for the other part of the Merkaba. And in that stop point, we're going to do 3 rounds of the song that goes with the manao currents. And it's right there that you're going to set the strength or the weakness of your pillar. This is going to be important for people doing round table groups who are worried about people coming in that are actually coming in to infiltrate and you can't tell them from anybody else. If you are aware, and you can teach your groups as we progress at learning it ourselves, and being able to teach round table groups how to hold their power, and to if they do a salutation before they do a round, if they do it at home even, before the fact, they can set their pillars very strongly, their own Maharic frequency very strongly, by learning to use that stop point well, by being able to hold the strength and the integrity of the energy they just generated with the first level of the activation, setting it in to the manao, and then going in to the next one. This is where we're going to learn how to have a little more control of what we do with sound as well. I'll read to you one part of this. It was kind of interesting. These are some of the steps we're going to do. Now, You pick which you're going to do, whether you're going to do lunar or solar salutation, and that would depend whether you're going to start with the top activation or the bottom activation. It's daytime, so we're going to do a solar one today. That means we would lead with the Manet sequence of tones. And here's the process. I'm going to read this to you so you get to see there's something a little different, a little more fine-tuning that's happening here than what you would normally see in a salutation. It says, all right, begin slow spinning and slow, low toning. So now we're getting specific. We've talked about it before, but now this is important, all right? The spin starts slow, and while the spin is starting slow, there's a slow, low toning. The voice is soft, the tone is low, and it's going slower. And it says, so you're doing a slow, low toning of the corresponding son, that goes with which level of the Merkle you're activating. Then it says, continue repeating the son tone, so we're going to repeat it over and over, just like we repeated the over and over, and increase the spin, just like you would normally, and increase the speed and volume of the son tone. So we're going to have to start paying attention. We've talked about it before, but never really made an issue of, okay, what are you doing with your spins? First, it was getting people to not fall over. That was the first accomplishment, and we've done really well. People aren't falling over very much in stands anymore or in salutations. Now that we've got that equilibrium set, now it's an equilibrium that we're trying to balance that we need to find in ourselves. Where, okay, I'm going to make my spin be slow now. My voice is low and slow, just like my spin. Now my spin's going to start to pick up, and as my spin is picking up, my voice is going to pick up too. My voice is going to get a bit louder, not going from very soft to very loud. You're building a sound wave, and we need to start paying attention to the fact that we're sculpting sound when we do this. So when we make the transition while we're spinning, our spinning is getting faster. As our spinning progresses, there should be a balance, and eventually you'll find it. Whereas your spin goes, your voice will take a natural thing to start to say the words a bit faster, which is going to be impossible to do this time because we're just learning the words. But you'll learn the words will start to go faster, and they'll get louder as they go, and you will literally create a vortice of sound field. And it's a sound field that if you handle it just right, and this is what the next part I wanted to read, I've watched this happen, and I've tried to help people to shift it without being able to explain it really well. I have watched what I call sound patties drop on the ground. It's the funniest thing to watch after like a round or something, or when somebody's doing a salutation. And you get the sound up there, and they're building the sound field, and they're building the pillar. It's starting to become a pillar, but it starts as a disc that tends to go up and go like this around them, or sometimes out in front of them rather than just over them. And if the shift isn't made, there's a way of very gently getting that disc to expand into a pillar and then very gently disengaging your body from it where it maintains its form integrity. However, if you drop the sound too fast, if you don't do the sound in the right way, like when you're closing around or something, you get sound patties where the pillar goes blip, it turns into a disc again, and then it goes splat on the floor. And they look like falling blobs. they spread out and just kind of go they sink into the ground. These are sound wave forms that were built, but we haven't figured out how to get out from under them yet to leave them standing. It's a very delicate process, actually, and we'll start learning how to do this. Part of it is you have to know your sound tones well before, if you're still stuck on trying to figure out, oh shoot, where'd it go? I'm getting dizzy trying to read while I'm spinning. That's going to disrupt you from being able to pay a lot of attention to it right now. But ideally, what we're aiming for is to get to the point where we become very aware of the relationship between our breathing, our movement, and our sound, and how that can be used to build different forms of wave current, and then what we need to do for those wave currents to sustain themselves. Now here is the beginning of learning how to pull yourself out from under your sound pillar so it stays put once you're done, which means you still have the frequencies activated, and it also means you've left a pillar. After you leave the beach or wherever you've done your thing, you've actually left a sound form there that you can go back to. If you do your salutations in the same place every day, you will progressively amplify your own development if you learn how to keep your sound from turning into a sound patty and falling. If you can keep it into a pillar, you will create a zone in your house or in your space where this will, just by stepping in it, it will amplify it. It'll set a Q zone without even having to go through the steps of setting a Q zone. If you learn how to hold your pillars, all right, and hold, and once we learn how to hold the pillars, then we can learn later. The later Suriyas and things will be teaching us how to, now that you have your block of sound to sculpt, what do you want to make out of it? We'll be taught how to make things out of it, literally, by sound. And this is how they got like the pyramids built and those kind of things. You have to know what kind of sound wave to send to lift a block that's X amount of tons. They're sound forms. You're creating forms that are thought forms, and you're using sound as the medium. So this is the beginning of learning the control of that process, because right now we create sound all the time, but we create kind of mutant sound forms. We create lots of plops all the time. You know, like just our speech actually does that. We'll be speaking like this, and there's the line of our English language or any of our languages that are in not in reversal that make a line of current that actually makes a sound form communication, and it drops pellets. These pellets are little patties that are falling from the reversals. So we're literally losing energy every time we speak because of the way languages work. When we begin to work with these tones, which are the closest translation to the pure tones that you can get on the planet at this time with the reversals that are present, we're beginning to be able to sculpt again, sculpt with sound. And how this goes is after you've got your spinning, all right, you start slow spin, slow low toning, start to pick up your spin, and gently, not abruptly, gently pick up your volume and speed of your toning as you go until you can begin to feel the building of the energy. We need to start paying attention to what our bodies are feeling. At first, when you start these things, you're probably so distracted by trying not to trip over your feet and trying to remember what the heck the words are, see them, that you don't even have time to be sensitized to feel what the energies are doing. So a lot of people won't feel anything when they first learn this stuff. But as they go and they get more confidence where their feet are doing what they need and they can almost like spin on autopilot, so they don't worry about falling over anymore, they're not staring at their thumb anymore, they don't, they've got that skill, then you have an ability to become more sensitized, where you start to become aware, shift your attention to not falling down, you already got that, to going into, okay, what am I feeling? What is the energy doing? You can start to pay attention to what the energy is doing. So once you feel a certain level of energy, this is the ideal that you're aiming for, to where you can get to the point where you can build your sound and your spin together, then you can have enough confidence in your body and your sound working together where you're not going to fall over, that you can think about for a minute while you're doing it, try to feel the energy. What is it doing? You'll be able to feel if it's flopping. Sometimes your spin will create your Merkaba field going like this, and you'll feel like it's like the bottom one especially does this. It'll wobble, and you'll feel like some hula hoops going around you. Like, what is that? Oh, wait, I got a wobble here. That means you need to get your sound and your spin a little more coordinated, because if they're not coordinated, you will get a bit of a wobble. Now, when we're working in groups and we're working with the Iani, they're helping us to hold frequency. So if we're wobbling, we were wobbling all over the place. Our round tables wobble all over the place. But we're having help to sustain their form by the Iani groups from Inner Earth. We need to, at some point, learn to be able to do this ourselves. And this is the beginning of that training, of learning what we need to pay attention to and what creates a stable sound field and what creates an unstable sound field that's going to fall apart and it's not going to do what you want it to do. So we get to the point where, let's say, we're feeling the energy build up. We got that far. We can begin to feel, are we wobbling or not? Okay, and if you're wobbling, try to feel whether your movement is going faster or slower than your sound, and try to just bring them up into the same range where there's an equilibrium that happens between how fast you're spinning and how the sound is going. Sometimes you'll get your body spinning too fast, and it's actually throwing off your whole equilibrium, where you're starting to get yourself dizzy and you don't quite realize you're doing it yet until you stop and fall down. Slow down your spin a little bit if you find yourself feeling like you're wobbling, if you feel like the field you're creating around you is wobbling. Just gently slow, don't stop abruptly, slow it down again, and then try to pick it back up. Go back to where it got out of whack, go back, slow down, come back and pick it back up again, and try to keep the sound balance and the movement balance going. You'll get a feel for this. This is why it's important that to use, now these technologies are being given to us. They're being given to us so we'll use them to help ourselves. If we do this stuff every day, it's not as hard. You spend maybe the first month just going, oh no, not that again, until you start to develop. You know your tones. You can go in without looking at your paper. Ideally, we get to the point where we could do a salutation like breathing. We've got it. We know it. We understand it. That means we know how to command the Manau forces and the Ire and the Manau, Ire, and Mane in our bodies without having to pick up a book. This means we're integrating what we're learning, not just having our mental bodies learn it and bounce it around. All right, this is where we're beginning to really focus on integrating. Now, there's a really neat thing here, and this the next step, that has to do with getting your seer, your pillar, your pillar, to stand and not fall. And it has to do and they just taught me this. It has to do with the spin-stop point, or the stop-spin point, however you want to call it, the point where you're going to stop spin. There's something you need to become aware of doing right there that's either going to make or break the sound field you just set. It's either going to make the thing turn into a pancake and fall on the ground, or it's going to help it stay and hover. And it'll be like a sound field that's actually going, and you can actually move away from it, and it will still do that. You've created somebody of sound. You've created a body of sound that is a body of consciousness. It's a co-creation. Now, you begin to slow the spin and the toning speed like we do in a salutation while retaining toning volume. Now, they're going to have us do this way. We begin to slow the spin and how fast we're saying the words, but we don't drop the volume. We don't bring the sound down. Now, there's different ways you can create other forms by bringing the sound down, but what they're going to teach us to do to build these pillars that stand, these sound forms, is they're going to have us slow the spin, slow the speed of the tones, but keep the volume at the level that it was, instead of going down like we could. That makes another kind of sound wave. For creating a seer, or an actual pillar, a sound form that you can then do something with and put it someplace, you need to keep the frequency in. So you keep the voice, saying the words more slowly as your spin slows, but keeping that volume up. And round tables is tough because you get so tired by the end of a round that you just want to kind of stop singing, stop spinning, and go to sleep. And the voices tend to get slow, and it's dragging. These are things that if you want to get good at being a sound sculptor, and that's where you start to get like your really directive, creative power back, where you can make stuff happen with sound. This is where it's discipline. It's learning how to discipline yourself to pay attention to your energy and do what's going to make it work. There are certain things that will build sound forms and certain things that will tear them down. And if we pay attention to what we're doing, we learn how to have that power selectively, where we can build when we want to and tear down when we want to, and not get the opposite effects. Now, we have our spin, we're slowing our spin, and we're slowing the toning speed with it. Means the words are being said more slowly, but at the same volume that we got it up to when we were doing fast spin, right? We're going to slow the spin to a stop. And at the stop point, it's called the spin stop point, we're going to immediately and abruptly stop toning at that higher volume, okay? We're not going to tail off. We're going to literally create the field, and when we hit the stop point, we're going to release it. It's like we built the field, built the field, built the field. It's still attached to our field. When we stop, once our Merkabas start to slow down, it's going to tear that field apart. So what we need to do is literally separate the body connection from it so it can still spin and have a life of its own. And this comes from, and this is going to take coordination. You know, we're all going to be tripping through this. Even when we do it individually, we're going to be playing with it for a while. Okay, wait a minute, where's my stop? What am I supposed to do at my stop point? Oh, yeah, that kind of thing. And these are living exercises. I mean, until you really integrate them and remember the steps, if you have to stop what you did in step one, or to find out what you have to do next in step two, you already let something different happen to what you created in step one. You know, you can't, if you stop your Merkaba in the middle of a salutation, you've stopped your Merkaba. You have to start your salutation over. So these are things we need to learn, and if we do, it's worth the energy put in. You will find expansions happening just by this technique alone, that you will start to really, really become aware of a lot of things, a lot of power that you have, a lot of knowing that you have that you didn't know you had. And this is the beginning of becoming a sound sculptor, a creator, a true creator that is able to take thought. At some point, we will be taught, after we know how to create these fields, we'll be taught about the solids, let's say, or some people call them the platonic solids. There are certain forms that are used to create specific types of things. We'll be taught how to first generate the sound waves. Then we'll be taught how to generate the specific types and shapes of sound waves. Once you've got the waves stable, then how you put them into different shapes, using different suriyas and things, to help fulfill certain intentions, to help you manifest things you'd like to manifest, but in ways that are in harmony with the Christos. If you try to use this stuff in negative ways, it will eventually come back and bite you. So that it's not worth having any negative intention or any manipulation intention toward anybody. If you want to go mess with somebody with sound waves because you're trying to make them love you or make them give you money or something like that, you're going to find yourself creating lots of nasties that are going to do it even worse back to you. So it's not worth even engaging it that way, but you guys know that already. So we're in this exercise, we're beginning to be taught about the need for the sensitivity. If we're going to become master builders, we have to learn how to make our bricks. and our bricks are the sound fields that we're generating. If we can get to the point where after a month or two we could do just this exercise well, like as individuals, you will have increased by about 3 years' time your own activation levels and your own frequency holding capacities. They're not hard exercises. There's not, and this is short. I mean, you've seen some of them. There's like 5 pages and 46 steps. This isn't one of those. There's 10 steps. That's all. In 1 month, you would be able to make huge, huge strides. All right. It depends on too what you have in your, what you've got to start with. If you have karmic issues coming up, that will slow, whatever your karmic miasmic thing is, that's going to temper how fast you can develop no matter what you're doing, because your own oversoul is going to watch out to make sure you don't kick up too much frequency in your system that's going to bring too much of the miasmic imprint out where your body can't tolerate it and makes you sick. So there's always this tempering factor. And then most of us want to get to the finish line before we even started the race. Like, if the finish line is inner Earth getting through a Stargate. Yeah. We need to learn to appreciate the process as well, and to realize that the moment point, this is now. This is where your point of power is. So every time you do a salutation is just as important as any time you might later use what you learned how to do to go through a gate. Doing this every day is just as important. In fact, it's more important than even brushing your teeth, because what's more important? Teeth eventually get old and fall out, and eventually if your body dies, your teeth are going with it, right? If you only have time to do one thing, I'd suggest a quick piece of mint gum and a salutation if necessary. We have so many excuses why we can't, why we won't, why we'll do it later. I'm terrible with this. I mean, there's certain things I'm trying to clear stuff. I smoke cigarettes. I cannot continue to do that forever. I know this, right? I know it's an old pattern that was developed, and I know the reasons why it was developed. It was actually adopted in the younger days because when you smoke cigarettes, it creates etheric mucus in the astral body. It creates a buffer field that, at the time, in my adolescence, I was under attack psychically. The Zeta groups were after me, and they were trying to stop the DNA activations because they didn't want me to grow up and remember who I was, basically. The cigarette smoke at that time, even though it's not great for the body, it sustained the astral field bubble. So there was like a blanket where psychotronics had hit it, but it would diffuse it so it didn't get into my body or my DNA template. That's why we started smoking. And it was very deeply ingrained because of that. It was like the body got used to that as a survival mechanism. And I have that pattern to clear. Now, eventually, we all have certain types of patterns. Some of them are idea patterns, not like smoking, but some of them are ways of looking at things that are doing the same thing, that are creating damage in the body that's not helping you. So we'll be clearing this stuff as we work with these. But if you don't use excuses, if you really realize that if empowerment is what you want, if you really want to find out what it means to be a master, you need to do the legwork that it takes to be a master. You don't learn to ride a bicycle by looking at it leaning against the side of the house. You learn by getting on, falling off maybe a couple times so you get your balance. You don't learn to win a marathon race by running one time, by going out and entering the race and getting really disappointed when your muscles all lock up a third of the way through and you fall down and you can't even breathe. You're not going to even get to the finish line. We need to cultivate the patience of an athlete when we're doing this. It's like being an athlete, where we're progressively going to work with this body to get it to its highest point of performance. And we're not going to do it in a way that we have to compete. This is like being in the Olympics, but it's not a competing Olympics. You're not going to compete against somebody else so you can be right and win and they're going to be wrong and not win. We're going to help each other with this. It's a cooperative. Once we are able to generate a sufficient amount of frequency in our body and hold these forms, there will be ways to use these sound forms to literally not only create immunity, but to clear anything that you've picked up along the way. We'll learn to use these sound forms to heal the miasmic pattern. But while we're generating these, even when we do Maharic Seal, we do Maharic Seal, even just a lame Maharic Seal, where you just manage to, kind of limp it up there, and it's really weak, and it's kind of going like this, but at least it's there, at least you tried, Sometimes when you're tired, it comes out that way. I mean, if you look at your pillar, sometimes it's bright and glowing, and boy, you can feel the frequency, and other times it's like, it looks like a ghost image. It has like holes and streaks in it of dark stuff. You can see where the frequencies aren't holding, right? Other times it looks like it could crumble, it almost looks dehydrated, like the molecules that it's made out of could actually go and it'll break like glass that you could hear it shattering. There are different conditions of your energy when you're using it. If we can work with building these. And this is going to be easy. Instead of doing a lot of other techniques, this is going to be one of the feature techniques that's going to be something that we use all the time, that we'll take with us into the Dance for Freedom as well. It may be, there'll probably be more added to it then. But it's 10 o'clock now. Okay, so we're gonna be a little late then, I guess. Okay. This is that extra. I know. This is the extra half hour that we had to make up from yesterday. All right. So I'm not going to talk too much more about it. We're going to try to do it. All right. Don't worry about how bad this is going to be this time, because everybody's going to say, "Wait, what was that? What do I have to do?" Because there's a lot of people. And as run, you're going to run this, right? Like you run the rounds, please? This one? No, please, you do this one. You do this one, please. Please, you do this one. You're better at this. You do this one. Come on, you said you'd help me. You slept more than I did.
Let's go.
Would you please? You're going to run this, right, love?
Don't be nosy.
He will. He's master of the rounds here. I'm master of the computer board here. He's master of the rounds. I can get it two-dimensional on paper, but this person brings this stuff to life more than anybody I've ever seen. Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
He'll run it. Okay, so we're going to get down to the thing. When I watched him, when I watched, I mean, I understand like round tables, and it came through. It was a transmission that I translated and everything, got all that detail. I understand how to do them. I can see the stuff really clearly in my head, but when it gets out there and you have all these bodies that are chattering with each other and saying, where am I supposed to stand? And you're looking at this thing with hoops on the ground, and you're trying to figure, what was number what? I look at, there are people, he was just amazing. He figured out the hoop setup after having to do it once with no hoops and trying to just line up the angles between bodies. Yeah. He came up with the hoop idea, which was perfect, because at least all right, you guys stand there, you guys stand there, there's the the platform. But how he was able to organize that, I'm afraid to all by myself right now run rounds, because I'm spending time doing all the written work all of the time. I haven't gotten up there and been able to do it. He's amazing with what he can do, and you guys are getting like that.
Selling the soap.
No, I'm just so proud of you. I look at that and say, I can't do that yet. But I wanted to also say that I'm proud of the other people that have been running the rounds. You guys are doing it as well as he, like he is. You're running rounds better than I could right now. Okay? So I just want you to know that. I can tell you more things about the rounds than you know, but as far as getting people's bodies where they need to be.